I'd like to call to order the May 8th meeting of the Shelby Township Planning Commission. Ask the secretary to call the roll, please.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Mr. Meredith?
Here.
Ms. Baker?
Here.
Ms. Casali?
Here.
Mr. Turner?
Here.
Mr. Opone is absent this evening. Mr. LoRe?
Here.
Chairman Moffitt, we have a quorum.
Great. First item is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Was there an addition to old business?
Yes, I think I put that in front of you.
Okay, so we're going to add under old business, Marv's Auto Electric is requesting an extension of a Class A non-conforming use. To the motion maker and supporter, is it okay if I add that to the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. First item is approval of minutes from April 10th.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. First item, site plan number 23-11, Joe Youngblood for the Shelby Township Activity Center. Is the petitioner or representative here? You know, we're going to grill you. I would need a name and an address, proof of,
I think I know this. Good evening. Seal Putras with AEW. We're the design engineer for the project. It's a small project. It's parking expansion to the Parks and Rec facility. We're proposing 41 parking spaces to the west side of the building. We're meeting all the zoning setbacks. We are adding trees along the west side of the newly purchased property to the west to provide screening between the residents and the expansion of the parking lot. That's all I have.
to the planner for any comments?
Chairman Moffitt, just a few minor comments based on the technical aspects of the site plan. Indicate any easements or right-of-ways with LIBOR and page number. Per the assessing department, both parcels need to be combined as part of this improvement. And then from the DPW department, copies of the proposed storm sewer and paving plans must be submitted to the DPW when completed. No comments from the fire or police department or objections from the Macomb County Department of Roads. So this is actually the Parks and Rec purchased the property just to the west of them for this parking lot expansion. This is a permitted use within that district, and they meet all the zoning ordinance requirements.
And this passed township engineering?
Yes, it has.
Fair enough. Any questions? Any questions from the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Turner.
I'll move to approve site plan number 23-11, Joe Youngblood, Shelby Township Activity Center, 14975 and 14881, 21 Mile Road, located on the north side of 21 Mile, west of Hayes Road, for a parking lot addition subject to submitting revised site plans addressing all department and planning commission comments. Support.
Moved by Turner, support by Snyder. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Commissioner Turner?
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith? Yes. Commissioner Baker?
Yes.
Commissioner Casali?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner LoRe?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You can charge extra. You got it approved.
Thank you.
Next item under old business is Marv's Auto Electric, and I'll ask the planner to. Oh, okay, actually, we do have the petitioner. Okay. Name and address, please.
Sean Drager, 56166 Van Dyke Avenue, Shelby Township, Michigan. That's the shop address. You want my house address?
No, that's fine.
I'm just seeking like a preliminary, trying to find out if my options are available to expand the parking lot to the north. Just to give me some more parking and try to not make it look so clustered, and
Okay.
that's pretty much it. I just want to see if it's even an option or. That's it.
Okay. So I do recall this petition back, did we do this, 2012? It was for, it is for a non-conforming use. The idea to continue to, to allow this use was to sort of clean up the site. It wasn't, in my opinion, to expand it. So this is frankly not something that I wouldn't support. It's not really appropriate to a C1 district. It's also probably not how that portion of the township at this point needs to expand. It's not sort of in character with how the development pattern is on Van Dyke between 25 and 26.
Right.
So planner wish to offer her comments, or I can turn it to the board. No, the board, let's see if there's any thoughts from the board.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Turner.
one of the issues I have, and I understand you'd like to, expand your business, and I guess it would be a question for our attorney. Class A non-conforming use is prohibited to expand. And so I'm wondering if we went ahead and expanded, if we're going against the letter of the law and the letter of the ordinance.
You would have to give them additional approvals.
What does that mean?
Well, you're a non-conforming use, but I think you have the authority to, if they want improvements were to be made, it's not prohibiting you from doing that.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Moffitt, just a few comments. Mr. Drager purchased the property to the north of them, so originally they had approval to park vehicles in the back that were being repaired, and all the repairs were supposed to be confined to the interior of the building. I know that there's some parking also in the front, so with the parcel to the north, Mr. Drager was looking to expand some of the parking for the vehicles that he's working on and planning on enclosing it with a fence, along with installing parking along the front of the building and to the north of the building, and adding some landscaping, just to clarify on the use of this property. But it's it's 0.75 acres, just under 1 acre, and it's residentially zoned to the east, and C1 to the south, which we had a site plan that was approved recently for a retail center, and the north is also C1 with a small office building, I believe, on it.
Okay. I'm inclined, because this was a last minute ad, that it wasn't part of the published agenda. So there were no one from the neighborhood allowed to comment on this, to maybe to suggest or ask for maybe to table this until, we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
Give us a chance to actually take a look a little deeper. I mean, this is the first, I was aware
Yeah.
of it because I got a heads up earlier today, but,
And I think-
because I have a history with it, I understand it a little bit, but.
Right. And I think the only, Mr. Drager is willing to, get in depth with the site plan and do everything else. He just wanted some sort of, response from the board. If this would be something the board would like to consider, then he would hire a civil engineer and start working on his plans, if this is something the board would be open to. If not, then he didn't want to go ahead and contract a civil engineer to do all the work and
That's fair, but I still think, I still think that we should offer this up to the neighbor,
Sure.
to
We
the
can do that.
neighbor, to the surrounding area,
Yeah.
to get that feedback, to then offer him advice,
Sure.
You know.
we can do that.
If no one cares and if it's welcomed and embraced by the neighborhood, I tend to doubt that, but that may change my opinion, so.
We'll see.
Mr. Caselli?
Yes, I would agree. I'd like some time at least to go out there and look at the site again, and before I recommend to have you do future work on the site. So I would agree with Mr. Moffitt, just to postpone and then let us review it.
It's 2 weeks, we'll give you that.
Sounds fair to me.
It's okay.
Since the information is going to stay the same, if I can collect those packets back, and we'll just give them to you at the next time around.
All right, thank you very much.
Is there a motion to postpone?
So move.
Support? Moved and supported, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next item under new business, Vito Castellana, 23 on Mound. So, name, addresses of anyone who's going to speak, and then what you're requesting of this body this evening, and then what are you proposing? You're proposing, what are you requesting?
Good evening, James Sarconi appearing on behalf of 23 Mound LLC, legal counsel for the company. I've got with me this evening the principals of the company, who I'll introduce in a moment. Address for purposes of this meeting is 52188 Van Dyke, Suite 105, and that's in Shelby Township, 48316. I have with me Vito Castellana, I have Vince Castellana, sorry, back there, and I have Joe Vito, the architect. That's our architect for this project. What we, I believe, have submitted for your consideration, this is a concept plan of what should be a primarily climate-controlled self-storage facility. It's the corner of the northeast corner of 23 Mile and Mound. It's 3 parcels zoned light manufacturing. We have 2 specific concepts that we've rendered. We have one that we are calling, no surprise, version 1. Hopefully everybody has a copy of that. The version 1 involves the building, climate-controlled portion being located on the corner right there at 23 and Mound, with behind it the smaller self-storage units and ancillary parking and some ancillary storage. Sorry. The second rendering would have the building towards the back, the northernmost portion of the property, and have up front the perpendicular storage buildings that would be perpendicular to Mound, and I would guess you would call it, I'm sorry, perpendicular to 23, and we'd call it parallel to Mound. The overhead doors that are on the smaller outside storage buildings, they're inside storage, but they're the smaller buildings there, and the climate control building are, I think, 7 feet 8 inches. Is that correct? I'm sorry, 8 feet. They're 8 feet tall. Those doors. With that first version that I alluded to, we're proposing to move the property back 5 feet further than it was originally contemplated from the front yard setback. We're dealing with 2 front yard setbacks, of course, because we are the corner lot. We're proposing a 4-foot berm on that 23 Mile front setback with additional screenage with trees. On the northern side of that berm would be the fence that we're looking to put in to secure the property. And I'm trying to think something else that I wanted to point out. Parking that we have there is, we have 49 spaces. There are spaces that are in the front along the office building for new customers, existing customers to pay, obviously staff that work in that building. And then there are spaces that are parallel to some of the units and scattered throughout the remainder of the property. My client has held this property for approximately 19 years, so this is a long overdue improvement to that corner. It's been vacant for 19 years. We have done some feasibility studies. It does not appear by any of the professionals we've consulted that a shopping center makes sense there, or a restaurant, or frankly any other use, that we believe there's sufficient density and need for additional on-site storage. The RV storage, which will be minimal, like we said, the primary use will be climate control indoor, as an ancillary use, which would not require site plan, any special land use approval. At this time, we're looking for some feedback as to this concept and this rendering as we have it. We do understand that based upon the zoning ordinance, our garage doors that would appear to be in the within the vicinity of the front yard setback, which we have to deal with too, are technically not. I would say technically not permitted. However, I believe they're completely in the spirit of what was intended with the ordinances. The loading and unloading doors, as I understand them, that use that you'd be trying to protect against or minimize the impact of would be something like a manufacturing facility receiving inventory or unloading product. And our doors and uses is fairly minimal. We're going to be open during normal business hours, so we're talking something like 7 to 8 in the morning till 5 or 6 in the evening. This is not going to be a 24-hour self-storage facility. The access to the facility is actually off of Mound Road, so there wouldn't be any traffic that's trying to load or unload in the right-of-way or blocking any pedestrians from moving about. Less intensive use than we presently see in that district and with the heavy manufacturing to the south side. So we think the impact is actually going to be minimal, and that it should be approved with those doors there. I myself today took a drive around, or from Mound, I took a drive from the northern part of Shelby Township down to 23 and across, and then Van Dyke. I've seen numerous instances of say roll-up doors. There was a couple of 20-foot roll-up doors that were within the front yard setback and right-of-way. Whether or not they were grandfathered and the timing is irrelevant to me. The point was what we're going to build here I think is aesthetically pleasing. It wouldn't interfere with anything that anyone's trying to do in that surrounding area. And with that, I'd like to see if we get some feedback about how we've conceived of this project, or the concept that we have here, or any specific questions that you might have for what we're trying to do here before we move forward with trying to get site plan approval.
Okay, thank you. To the board, any questions, comments? Mr. Turner.
A couple questions. Do you have a similar facility like this somewhere else?
So as this entity, 23 Mile LLC, we do not, but the principals do have other facilities. One such facility is my client Vince Cirillo owns one. It was not built. He did not build it, but he owns it. That's one in Washington Township. We're in the process of building one just south of that facility, similar to what we have on the concept plan there. That one we both got approval, and we got a variance having to do with the wetlands that were within a certain setback. But the point was, we're building something substantially similar to what we have there at, is that 28 in Van Dyke. And do you also have another, do you have another storage?
Not storage.
We have other proposed. Okay, so between shopping centers, but storage facilities, we have one built, one that's been approved and is pre-construction, and then we have another one that's before this township for a different, that's outside storage, not, doesn't intend to be climate-controlled indoor storage. So we do have another one that's in site plan review before this township, and that's at 24 in Shaner, if that answers the question.
Yes. Now, in the RV storage, you said it's going to be minimal. How many do you think you would store there? Will there be any repairs done on the RVs on the lot?
So I'll answer the second question first. There should be no repairs done. It's not designed or intended for people to do repairs on their RVs at the lot. At the moment, how many spaces? There's
So why don't you
46.
come on up and then
I apologize. This is the architect, Joe Vito.
your name and address, sir.
My name and address for the record?
Yeah.
Name is Joseph Guido, Guido Architects, 23419 Ford Road in Dearborn. We've done a lot of these self-storage facilities. I don't know if you've seen any of the 1-800 self-storages that are out and about. In fact, there's one under construction right now at 12 Mile and Southfield Road in Southfield, and that's actually in a business district where there was approval for that. These facilities have come a long way from the original ones where there were mostly garage-style buildings scattered around a piece of property. So there are a lot more.
This is going to be branded as a 1-800 storage?
Oh, no.
No, we just have done all their facilities. We've done theirs, and we probably have 15 to 20 that we've done in the last 7 or 8 years. So the whole image of the industry has changed with climate control and multi-story buildings. A lot of them are fit in commercial districts much more so than they did before. This is very in tune in keeping with the ones that I do for 1-800 mini storage, self-storage that have been very successful. It's kind of the same concept that's been very successful for them. And I think one important thing that I'd like to get across is, at least in my opinion, I think the language of the ordinance in terms of the loading doors in the front yard was, from my reading of many ordinances over 40 years that I've been in practice, I think it was generally intended for industrial uses themselves, where you have semi-trucks, truck docks, large loading doors, shipping and receiving, those kind of things, much more intense use of loading area in the front yard. These, the person would rent the unit, typically unload their belongings in there one time, and many times they would never come back for months at a time. So the use of those doors is very, very minimal compared to what you would perceive as a typical industrial use and setting. In fact, I have one in a facility that I used to own that I pay $284 a month on, and I haven't been there in a year and a half. So that's typical for these kinds of facilities. You put your stuff in there and you go away, and I would say 99.9% of the time these doors would not be used on that front elevation once it's leased up.
So if I can,
If I could, back to your question.
Yeah,
it's,
please, yeah.
It's between 40 and 45 spaces presently in there, in the concept for the RV storage. However, I'll call it as density, as we fill up the facility, the future plan would be to build more buildings so that we would not have RV storage. It's more lucrative, obviously, to have the garage storage or climate-controlled storage. So we would try to eliminate some of those RV outdoor, we'll call them winter month storage spaces in favor of indoor storage.
so to my question, I asked you about the repairs. You said there should be no repairs. There will be no repairs?
Well, that's as a lawyer, I'll tell you, I can't tell you if someone shows up there and starts trying to change a battery on an RV.
I'm talking about major type of maintenance
Mechanical.
repairs.
Mechanical repairs, no.
That's right, yeah. So
There will be
if that's,
signage that says it's prohibited.
okay, perfect.
I think one way to view this too is anticipate, if you do come back with a plan, that these will be questions that'll need to be
Absolutely.
answered and recorded somewhere.
Yep.
On what's submitted.
Which I'm making note of, sure.
Thank you.
I understand your position on the doors, and I guess everyone's open to an interpretation. Frankly, I given as traffic is that, and also given, what my perception of the sort of evolution of storage too, there are more businesses operating out of there. So I believe there will be more than just 2 years of someone just set it and forget about it. Obviously, I would think the proximity of multiple locations that have just come before this township around the Amazon and the additional warehousing space sort of builds into that sort of last mile. I get it. I don't necessarily, and I've lived in that area most of my life, so I don't necessarily object to what you're looking to propose, but I think it needs to be I would take a quality of, and we just approved the Grand Sacra,
18 foot for the canopies.
yeah, and just on, a two-story, 80,000, 100,000, not, climate controlled, right on Van Dyke, between 20, right next to an existing, around the corner from an existing indoor storage as you get, and as you're down the street from I wonder at what point are these going to become like gas station and banks that just and CVS's that every corner, okay, it was the hot topic. You found money. There were REITs that wanted to invest in this stuff, and it got rushed into. At what point do we have saturation? Again, I don't own the property. I don't tell anybody how to do their business. All we're here to do is sort of say this is what we believe the township standards are, and approve based on that. Okay, so with that, prefer the first one to the second one with the building on the street. I don't like the doors on the front on 23 Mile Road. I would anticipate some brick, some stone, some natural materials on a good portion of that building, and that's consistent with what we just did with the Grand Sacra submission. The outdoor storage, I think, is easier with in that back corner, because the township property is to the north. You've got the
Access
Edison, others, yeah, exactly. DTE, that's another headache to east. So it kind of fits in there, and I could see an argument to say, okay, we're going to build these buildings with the future potentially building other structures, and then while that waits to happen, that we'll do some outdoor storage there that screens. Like the screening, you would want, decent, both on mound, landscaping on Mound and 23 Mile Road. Anyone else wish to offer their thoughts? Now, is this 3-story, 2-story? Okay. And you're right up against, what, 35 feet? Is that the ordinance?
So there is I don't want to call it an exception, but it's under 35 feet, the building itself, but we have a decorative accent at the corner. That's this,
So that'll need to go to ZBA.
so it's not, I would call it, it's not space, but it's an extended fascia, or what have you. This, the red accent there takes us to 37 feet, so it's just
So
it's a panel.
So ZBA is going to have to approve that. It'll go to
We
them.
can
So again,
eliminate it or
So, yeah, yeah, that's your, yeah. So if you do the first one, then so some kind of brick or stone or some, on the unit that's on Mound, and then the north and west elevations on the larger unit. Since that's the one I would prefer, that's the one I'll comment on. Anyone else?
Yes, I do have a question.
Commissioner Moore.
Thank you. The, as far as the other storage buildings, not the one facing Mound or the back facing Mound, the outdoor storage, that type of material that you're proposing, is that metal siding then for the other 2 outdoor storage units?
it's actually
On the lower, yes. Okay. Okay, thank you. And then I do concur with what Mr. Moffitt said, as far as the additional screening, landscaping, especially abutting the building, along Mound Road with the storage units there. I know there's some sparse landscaping that you have there. I would like to see more. And also on 23 Mile Road as well.
Commissioner Casale?
Yes, thank you. I do like option number 1. I don't have a problem with the garage doors, especially if your screening is going to be as pictured here. I think that's going to provide a nice buffer visually. Maybe it would be nice to see that screening along Mound also, but not necessary in my opinion. I think it's aesthetically pleasing. I don't have a problem with the proposal, and I would vote for option 1.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner LoRe?
I would support her comments. I appreciate the corner element architecturally of the building. Option 1 is also my favorite, and then 4. I like the berm along Mound Road along with the screening and landscaping. If that can be transported to the drawings as shown in the renderings, making sure that the height and the amount of trees, size of trees, as the rendering shows is important. I personally also have an issue with the garage doors on 23 Mile Mound, as long as the screening and the renderings are conveyed accurately in the drawings. The elevation-wise along 23 Mile Road, it is a long elevation, and after that corner, it's a bit stark. So I think some of the characteristics would be nice to carry through to some pattern, to some degree. But overall, I like option 1 the best.
For my clarification, if you wouldn't mind, there's a single building that faces, it's the single-story building on Mound. You're talking about carrying over some of the architectural elements that are at the corner building to that building?
So the main building, you have the red corner element. Yes. That building carrying down 23 Mile Road, whether there's some pilasters breaking up that long elevation and some material breaking up.
Okay.
So it's not one long continuous elevation with the
Understood.
same material.
No, I got you.
So you need to speak, on the mic.
Here on the rendering, the east corner of the building on the 2nd and 3rd floor, we would add windows. They're similar to the west elevation, to the front elevation at the 2nd and 3rd floor over the top of the doors. So there wouldn't be all siding on that side. We'd add some windows at the top 2 floors as well. They don't appear on this rendering.
So would that be symmetric? It would look
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, it'd be the same as the windows that are on the west elevation.
Yeah.
make it look more like an office building, all the way across, with the exception of the doors that'll be screened. Thank you, those are good comments.
Mr. Chairman, I would also go with option 1, and I would concur with Mr. LoRe. As long as the screening on the doors is exactly what's here and they don't turn out to be sticks that would take 2 decades to get to look like this, I think that would be important. So if you could transcribe what's here onto the plans, that would be important.
Understood. Caliper and dimension, tree type, we'll have all of that laid out in the plan, on the drawings.
What else?
Mr. Moffitt, if I may.
Yep.
Thank you. I just wanted to go over a couple of the items that were at, the issues at hand. Again, the loading and unloading, that would require a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals and support from the Planning Commission. There's also fencing in the front yard setback, which would also require a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. We discussed the exterior facade material. The building height would also need a variance unless the applicant brought it down to the 35 feet, even with the portion that's extending out, although I think that's, kind of makes the building, I don't have an issue with that. The only thing, other thing I wanted to bring up as well, if there's, if this is a climate controlled, is, you know, all the rooftop equipment will have to be screened, so I didn't know if that was a parapet, the third floor was maybe just a facade of a third floor, like a faux third floor, and the rest of it was a parapet wall. So all the equipment would have to be screened, the units on top. The parking requirement, you said that you have, how many spaces provided?
We have 49 spaces.
Okay, so I only see 11 on the plan in front of the building. I'm not sure where the rest of the spaces are.
Again, this isn't a site plan review, so
Correct.
just want to just make note, you don't have to answer that question now, so go ahead.
Right, so.
I can if you'd like.
It'll need to be answered is all.
Right, so, he had mentioned there was the rest of the parking spaces that are part of the area in front of the units. Well, you can't count that as parking spaces.
I'm not sure why. That's how these facilities function.
Okay,
Comments, we understand the comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And the only other thing that I wanted to mention in relationship to the berm, it looks like that berm would be located in a sanitary easement. So the feasibility of having that berm along Mound Road or 23 Mile Road you would contact our engineers or DPW to see if you can install that berm along 23 and Mound.
Will do, okay. If I may.
come on up.
Introduce.
Good evening. My name is Vince Cerullo, 53425 Pondview, Shelby Township. That berm that we were talking on 23 Mile, we already have discussed it with Mr. Miller, which actually Mr. Miller supports it. Mr. Miller also supports the spruce, not a pine tree, I'm sorry, not a maple tree, because the roots grow deep. So Mr. Miller recommended to us to put pine trees on that berm, because the pine trees the roots do not go deep, they just spread out. So we already have that approved through Mr. Miller, through the DPW.
Comments received, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
The only difference with option 2, in the comments that are written in the review, 2, 3, 4, and 5 would still apply in the layout for the option number 2, except for the storage in the front yard setback. So basically, option 2 is not feasible, only because the storage is not permitted in the front yard. That would be considered front yard.
Okay.
But that's option 2,
All right,
which.
all right, thank you. There you have it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening.
Planning Director's report?
I don't have anything, Chairman. Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Your support?
Support.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Remember to subscribe to the Shelby TV YouTube page and click the notification bell to get updates on all of the Shelby TV content.